Valor Ash sweeps the regionals and takes number 1 on the Silph leaderboard.
What's up guys, Valor Ash here presenting to you my regionals competition, how I performed, and I want to first jump into a little bit about my team selection. So right off the bat, I believe that the 2 most powerful Pokemon in Freestyle and regionals play are Medicham and Azumarill. And outside of that, your remaining 4 Pokemon should either be things that support Azumarill and Medicham, or that counter Medicham and Azumarill, or a nice blend of the 2. So I brought along Haunter because Haunter is one of the few things that can beat Medicham with 2 shields. There are only 31 Pokemon in regionals that are able to beat Medicham if Medicham double shields, and Haunter is one of them. The nice perk of Haunter is that it is also able to take out Azumarill with a shield bait, and while Sludge Bomb does slightly better against Azumarill in that it kills it faster because Sludge Bomb charges slightly faster than Shadow Ball, with the shield bait you can still win against Azumarill in all 3 shield scenarios with Shadow Ball. And with Shadow Ball you get a lot of better neutral coverage against the field, especially against the steel types like Skarmory. One of the reasons that I went with Melmetal over Bastiodon is that while Bastiodon is amazing and is a tank and can absorb incredible amounts of damage, I like the volatility that Melmetal has. He has a better matchup against Azumarill because Bastiodon really doesn't have any favorable matchups against a Hydro Pump Azumarill. So that's really the primary reason why I went with Melmetal, and also Melmetal picks up a win against Venusaur while Bastiodon does lose to it. Also, I chose Gallade over Venusaur because Gallade beats Venusaur and Gallade picks up a win against Haunter, as well as performing very, very well across the field. Some of the movesets that I ran, so for Haunter, I ran Shadow Claw, Shadow Punch, and Shadow Ball. For Azumarill, I ran Play Rough and Hydro Pump because I had Melmetal, and Melmetal will lose to Bastiodon. On Azumarill, I chose to run the Hydro Pump so that I would have better Bastiodon coverage. Melmetal, I ran Rock Slide and Thunderbolt. Gallade, I bought Close Combat and Leaf Blade, and Leaf Blade actually turns out to, you can fire it off pretty quick. It only takes 3 confusions to get to a Leaf Blade. Skarmory was pretty standard with Sky Attack and Flash Cannon, and Medicham was also the standard counter power-up punch and Ice Punch. So for this first matchup, I decided to use Skarmory because it covers Trophus and Altaria pretty well, as well as checks Medicham unless Medicham burns 2 shields, and can also seriously dent Azumarill. And then for the things that Skarmory couldn't fully handle, I also decided to bring Azumarill. And Azumarill handles the Sunnycast form, the mirror matchup with Azumarill, Medicham, and Bastiodon. And then for a little bit of extra coverage, I bought Medicham of my own, and that's just the core power trio, really, that we see of the Season 1 regionals. And honestly, any chance that I can get to run Azumarill and Skarmory together, like if there's not an electric presence on the other team, I'm gonna bring it. So that's what I ended up bringing for this guy. So let's jump into the matches. So again, I'm gonna lead with Skarmory, Medicham, and back in Azumarill. And unless he bought Azumarill, his only check to a double shielded Medicham is Azumarill itself. So I decided to use double shielded Medicham as a safe switch, which I needed to use because obviously Skarmory into a Fireball cast form is not going to work out well for me. So I decided to eat a Weather Ball as it's not going to do a tremendous amount of damage. And I'm just going to continue to build up here energy and my attack stat with Power Punches. And my opponent makes a critical mistake as he switches in Altaria and doesn't shield, or he underestimates the amount of energy that I had with an Ice Punch, which almost one-shots Altaria. Now here, when there's a simultaneous knockout in the middle of a game, you don't want to be the first person to throw your Pokemon out. you want to wait until your opponent throws a Pokemon out, and then you choose your Pokemon based on what they throw out. So I waited for him to throw Trophus out, and then I bought in Skarmory. And this, as you remember from Tempest, is a great energy farming matchup. So I'm not going to shield once, I'm just going to store up a whole bunch of energy in the bank, and then I'll have several Sky attacks to let go after this matchup. So he brings in back that Fire Cast form, and then I didn't even get to bring in Azumarill, and I didn't even burn a single shield. So second game I'm going to lead with Medicham, because again his only check to Medicham 2 shields is Altaria if he shields the Ice Punches, or Azumarill. And luckily for us, we led into Fireball Cast form again. So Medicham again is going to do the ball rolling with his power-up punches. I decided to shield it just so I could preserve a lot of health on Medicham. And again, he switches into Altaria. And again makes the critical mistake of not shielding the Ice Punch, especially after a power-up punch. So I switched in Skarmory, and I'm not going to use my fast attack. I'm going to continue to farm up energy so that I'm ready for this Fireball Cast form to come back out, and I can grid it with at least one Sky attack, either drawing a shield or knocking the Pokemon out. And while Skarmory was close to a second Sky attack, I just decided to let him go, as I had a Power-Up Punch Medicham in the back and an Azumarill, which I bought in to energy farm a little bit from his cast form. So now we have Azumarill in the mirror matchup, and again you want to use Play Rough in these situations, as that's going to deal the greatest amount of neutral damage, because both Ice Beam and Hydro Pump are resisted. So here it just turns into a bludgeoning match of several Play Roughs. And I decide to shield and preserve that last. I was one bubble away from a Play Rough. And I bring in Medicham to finish off his Azumarill. And my opponent lagged here, and I offered him a rematch, but he said he didn't feel like it would make a difference, so he just declined the rematch. And I eat the Weather Ball with a already boosted Medicham, and that is the end of round 1. So our next lineup is against Rasta Poke 13, and the key thing that stuck out to me about his lineup is that he's not running Bastiodon. So Melmetal has a really strong matchup against his team, beating Skarmory, Venusaur, Altaria, and Azumarill. So I ended up bringing him in every game, as well as Skarmory. Skarmory beats Quagsire, Altaria, Medicham with 0 and 1 shield, and Venusaur. And it has the mirror matchup against Skarmory and can fairly go even with Azumarill. And then the first game ended up bringing Hunter, and the second 2 games ended up bringing Gallade. So I noticed a lot in my extensive practice that people like to lead Skarmory against me just because of the fear of Gallade itself. So I ended up leading Melmetal, hoping that I would catch Skarmory, and it paid off well. So this is a very favorable matchup for us. I ended up going for the Rock Slide, just so I could get a little bit of a shield bait going, because it looks to me that he decided to stay in this matchup. And then he switches into Medicham, and luckily I brought along Haunter for a little bit of coverage. Now Haunter, Ice Punch, yes, is going to hurt, but the first Ice Punch is not going to kill you. However, the second Ice Punch after a Power-Up Punch will kill you. So you generally want to start shielding the second or even third attacks from Medicham, especially if Medicham wants to hang on and burn some shields. So here I decide to farm up a lot of energy with Haunter, because he's not going to be able to get to that third Ice Punch from where he was. I was counting his counters, and he had only 6, and it takes 7 for him to get to Ice Punch. And as you can see, Shadow Ball absolutely decimated Skarmory. So I bring back in Melmetal just to do a little bit of farming without pulling the trigger on Thunderbolt. And luckily for me, he bought both Azumarill and Skarmory against a team in which I bought Melmetal. So without even having to use my third Pokemon, Melmetal and Haunter took out his entire team alone. Moving on to round 2, I led with Melmetal and scared off his Skarmory as a lead effectively, so now I get to use Gallade a lot more. Now this is an unfavorable matchup for Gallade if Medicham burns 2 shields. It's very, very, very close. However, Gallade will beat Medicham in the no shield and one shield situation. So I wanted to farm up a little bit of energy with Gallade here, and I countered his Vine Whips so that I could catch the Frenzy Plant with my Skarmory, come in and farm up a little bit of energy. And again, I'm not afraid of Bastiodon, and I'm not afraid of Lantern or Melmetal because he doesn't have one. So he brings in Quagsire, and again, this is still a favorable matchup for Skarmory. Now here's where I start to make some mistakes, is for whatever reason, I keep expecting Acid Spray because I had played against so many of my Scrim partners were running Acid Spray on Quagsire that, like, in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to shield this no matter what. So I decided to bring in Melmetal, and I'm like, well, he has Medicham in the back still. All that Quagsire is going to do is Acid Spray me and turn me into Paper Mache for his Medicham to run right through me. Ended up not working out well. It turned out to be Earthquake, and I really should have shielded there. So, but Gallade had 2 Leaf Blades in the bank, and you can see that I died with a Leaf Blade. I was tapping on it, but the counter damage went through, and I didn't get it, and I died with 2 shields. So I ended up going for the same exact lineup third game, and I was like, well, this time, you know what, shields actually exist, I'm going to use them. So this is a favorable matchup for us. In the 2 shield scenario, if it is a Hydro Pump Play Rough Azumarill, we also pick up the 1 shield matchup with Gallade as well. And here, I don't pull the trigger on Leaf Blade. I decide to finish him off with some confusion damage so that I have a lot of energy in the bank with Gallade. And 1 Leaf Blade is enough to one-shot both of the Mud Boys. And I had enough energy for 2 Leaf Blades here. So I decided to shield his Stone Edge, and because I can get to my last Leaf Blade without him getting to Stone Edge again. However, he pulled a really smart switch on me, saved his Quagsire, and now I bring in Skarmory. So I need to go into this next matchup with a little bit of energy, so I decide not to pull the trigger on Sky Attack, and I just need to farm off as much energy for Medicham as I possibly can, and then fire the Sky Attack into his Quagsire. So now Quagsire would have been able to kill Skarmory with whatever move that he would have been able to use. So I threw out Melmetal to absorb whatever attack he was going to take. If he tried to farm up Melmetal, Melmetal would have killed him with a Rock Slide. So for this next lineup against CDog2814, I decided that Azumarill was good against him because of the positive matchup against Medicham. Hydro Pump Azumarill beats Skarmory, has a good matchup against Dusclops, Quagsire depending on moveset, and it can take Melmetal with Hydro Pump if that's their shields are down, or you land the Hydro Pump. So Azumarill was coming for sure. And then Medicham to cover his weaknesses, be it Melmetal and Quagsire, depending on moveset. Again, I wanted Medicham in there. And then for my third slot, I ended up bringing Haunter the first game, and then, or the second game, and then I bought Melmetal the first game as well, just for a little bit of extra coverage against Dusclops, because that was kind of the hole in my coverage. So I decided to lead off with Melmetal, because if Melmetal burns 2 shields, it can actually beat Dusclops in a lead, which he ended up leading with Dusclops, so it works out for us. And all I need to do is just spam as much Rock Slide as I possibly can against Dusclops. Dusclops, his typical moveset is Fire Punch and Shadow Punch, so all I had to do was not eat a Fire Punch. And he realized that it was going to be a losing matchup for him, and he actually timed his switch really well because he ate a Rock Slide with this Quagsire. I made a little bit of a mistake here. I should have bought in Medicham, knowing that Dusclops was going to just come back out. But I made a bet. I was betting that Quagsire was not going to run Sludge Bomb, and it turns out Quagsire was running Sludge Bomb. So it didn't really work out too well for my Azumarill. So I farm up a little bit of energy here, and I'm at a 0-2 shield disadvantage. So hopefully I can try and turn things around. I try to fire off the Hydro Pump with the Azumarill because he knows that I still have Melmetal, and he needs to get rid of that Skarmory because at this point it's just a liability with Melmetal still in the game. So Melmetal comes back out, farms up a little bit of energy, and then he switches in Dusclops again to catch the Rock Slide. And unfortunately here, I tried to switch into Medicham, but I ended up eating a Fire Punch. So what I do here is I farm up enough energy, and then I switched in to catch the Fire Punch with Medicham. My opponent made a mistake here by shielding the first Power Punch because Ghost double resists fighting, which I don't think you should have done here. He should have shielded the subsequent Power Punches, but it ended up working out in favor for us. So here, I figured the only way that I was going to win is if I didn't fully charge that Power-Up Punch on Medicham. Because I needed to come back in with Melmetal, farm up a little bit of energy, and then be able to finish off his Skarmory with a Thunderbolt. So I learned that strategy from Blandon, where you don't charge to the full 3 rings, I only charge to 2 rings on that one. So I brought around Haunter this time for a little bit of better coverage against Dusclops. It's more reliable in the 1 and 2 shield situations. He switched in Skarmory, and he said that after this match he didn't realize that it charged up so quickly, and he didn't shield his Skarmory from the Shadow Ball. So as you can see, Shadow Ball does an incredible amount of damage. He brings back in Dusclops, and he's going to shield this Shadow Punch, as he should. So now we're at even shields. Dusclops has a little bit of an energy advantage, but that's okay. I'll bring in a Azumarill. And this is where I started to figure out that his Dusclops might only have one move. It seems to only be running Fire Punch, no matter what I bring against it. So I decided to farm up a little bit of extra energy, and his Quagsire comes out, and this is where Medicham comes into play. And I get the Power Punches rolling. I decided not to shield here. And we're just going to keep on building energy and momentum with the Power Punches. And ultimately Medicham ends up finishing off Dusclops with just Power Punches. So I decided to shield the Fire Punch, finish it off with a Power-Up Punch and a counter, and that will be the end of round 3. And we're moving on to round 4 now. Doing a great job editing, Blandon. Keep it up. So our next challenger was Ray X0125, and immediately the key thing that stuck out to me is he does not have a counter to a double shielded Medicham except for the mirror. So Medicham was on the roster for sure. And then Melmetal takes out Skarmory, Azumarill, and Venusaur, and does okay in the mirror. Whereas Medicham can cover the Whiscash that would otherwise give Melmetal some problems. For the first round, I ended up bringing Skarmory, and in the second game, I ended up bringing Gallade. So running into match 4, we're going to lead Melmetal with Medicham and Skarmory in back. Right off the bat, we have a Melmetal mirror match, so I elect to just go for the Thunderbolts in this mirror match. And again, these mirror matches take some time. They're a little bit slow. I also decide to eat his Thunderbolt. And here's where it gets a little bit tricky, is we both want to hold on to charge move priority. Excuse me, switch priority. So we both start shielding towards the end when the Rock Slides start flying. However, I wanted to catch a Rock Slide with my Medicham, as it's going to be not very effective. And Medicham would theoretically finish off his Melmetal, but instead he switches to Whiscash. And this is a favorable matchup for Medicham. And I'm not going to burn any shields on this matchup, because I personally like to save shields when I can. So I finish Whiscash off with some counters, and then I greet the next thing that's going to come in with a Power-Up Punch, which is going to be Medicham. Medicham comes in, that's great. Now I have Skarmory, which will win the 1 shield matchup against Medicham. And knowing that he has Melmetal in back, I don't want my Skarmory to fall prey to it, so I charge up a little bit of energy, and I only tapped a few of the rings there so that I could potentially get off a little bit more, so I could potentially farm Medicham at the end, but it didn't end up working out because Medicham shielded. So I finish off Medicham with the Rock Slide, and with a shield in the bank, I actually just ended up Thunder Shocking his opposing Melmetal to death because my Melmetal had really good IVs. So for this round, I effectively scared off the Skarmory lead by leading Melmetal the first game. So I decide to lead with Gallade. And again with Gallade, I always like to eat the first Power Punch. And my opponent pulled a really skillful switch here. He switched in Skarmory, which effectively neutralized my Leaf Blade. As you can see, just how little damage that did, as Skarmory double resists grass damage. However, I had Melmetal in back, so it worked out. Now here I'm going to farm up a little bit of energy and just wait for the opposing Medicham to come back in. Now while Gallade will lose the 2 shields ever so narrowly to Medicham, he will win the 1 shield matchup, and especially at a shield advantage, which I have right now. So he tries to fake me out, and I almost switched out of this matchup, which would have been a death sentence, but I ended up staying in with Leaf Blade. And Azumarill gets an Ice Beam, and I just decide it's time to let go of Gallade. So now I bring in Medicham with 1 shield, and I shield this Play Rough right here, as that would have been a death sentence. And I finish off his opposing Azumarill with a Power Punch. And now it's just a Medicham mirror battle, but my Medicham has significantly more health than his, and we're both boosted once, so I end up winning this round as well. One key thing to note is if you're using Gallade, you can actually charge up to the first Leaf Blade, fire it, and then what I like to do is use 6 Confusions to build up 2 Leaf Blades and let both of them fly at the end. And that's how you can sometimes win the 2 shield matchup against Medicham. So for the final round, I ended up facing off against Jerry222. And immediately, right off the bat, this looks like a very unfavorable lineup, as he has Bastiodon, which beats Melmetal and Skarmory and Haunter. He also has Alolan Marowak, which beats Haunter, Melmetal, Gallade, and Medicham. So I had to come up with a unique strategy to try and beat this team. So I immediately reverted back to my favorite power duo of Azumarill and Skarmory because he didn't have an electric presence on his team. And for the third, I tried to tie it together with either Medicham or Melmetal. So for the first round, I decided to lead Azumarill into his Alolan Marowak, and it worked out. I was expecting that Alolan Marowak lead. Because it had so many positive matchups against my team, I knew it was going to be there. So he called my switch right, and he ended up switching into a Play Rough, which is alright. Play Rough would have been not very effective against Ghosts anyways. And I didn't have much of an answer for Azumarill, so I had to bring in Skarmory. Which typically, this is a favorable matchup for Azumarill, but I came out with the narrow win. Because it was an Ice Beam Azumarill, I came out with the narrow win with Sky Attack. So now I have a little bit of energy banked and I'm ready for my next opponent. And of course, he bought Bastiodon. Now I got a little too aggressive with my energy farming and I tried to get to that Flash Cannon and it didn't work out. But that's okay because I have Medicham to answer his Bastiodon. So he ended up with an excellent shield bait there with Bone Club, and he blocked my Play Rough. So the only thing that I can do at this point is attempt to farm as much energy off of him as I possibly can. because I won't have time to get to a play rough. Medicham comes in, and Azumarill's bubble took him to such low health that it ended up working out for me. And Medicham just comes in to sweep Bastiodon with 2 power-up punches. And that will conclude round 1. Round 2, I decided, that worked out pretty well for me. I'm just going to try the exact same lineup. I actually ended up leading with Medicham this time, which I caught myself in an unfavorable lead. So I had to switch to Skarmory. I went for the Flash Cannon here, because really that's the only way that I'm even going to be able to put a dent in Bastiodon. So it looks like Bastiodon decided to bank a little bit of an extra energy here. And knowing full well that Azumarill is coming out next, I elected to not shield. And besides, Flamethrower is not going to do a significant amount of damage to Medicham. So I'm going to try and just dent as much of his Azumarill as I possibly can. So I elected to shield here because I just want to keep the ball rolling with the counter damage and the power punches. Even though it's resisted, I want to be able to take out as much health from Azumarill as I possibly can. Because my only answer to Azumarill at this point is the mirror match in the back. He ended up timing that switch perfectly, and Venusaur took a play rough, and even though I have a shield, I know that there is no way in hell that I'm going to be able to come back from a game like this. So I just ate the Frenzy Plant, and we'll try again in round 3. Round 3, I just decided to change things up a little bit, knowing that he likes to bring Venusaur around. So I bought Melmetal for a little bit of extra coverage, and Skarmory as well, which ended up burning me this time because now I've led Melmetal into Bastiodon, which is an extremely unfavorable matchup for Melmetal. And even though this is an unfavorable matchup, I decided to burn Shield on Melmetal just so that I could attempt to take out as much health from Bastiodon as I possibly could. Because I can get to 3 Thunderbolts before he can get to 2 Flamethrowers. So Melmetal is down and out, and I bring Azumarill in to farm up as much energy as I possibly can. And he only got to 7 Smackdowns, and it requires 8 for a Stone Edge. So now I have Azumarill with a bunch of energy in the bank, and I tried to time this switch to where I would eat a Frenzy Plant, but he was so aggressively tapping on the Frenzy Plant that he fired it right into Skarmory. Now Skarmory and Azumarill, this is a fairly, neutral matchup. Azumarill will generally take the loss with Ice Beam. But luckily I had enough energy farmed from Venusaur that he was just not expecting the Flash Cannon, I suppose. It ended up fainting Azumarill. Now here's where things get really interesting. Despite double resisting Vine Whip, he actually ended up finishing off my Skarmory with Vine Whip. And he greeted my Azumarill with Frenzy Plant. So at this point you're thinking, oh no, it's all over, I don't have Ice Beam. But luckily I had so much energy banked from that Bastiodon and from farming Venusaur when it first came in that I was able to pull off a second Play Rough before he got to his second Vine Whip, and everything worked out great in the end. To make all this possible, I'd like to thank all of my scrimmage partners that relentlessly practiced against me. I harassed, about 60 people for battles, ended up battling about 45 people for just best of 3s for regionals. I'd like to give a special thank you to Blandon for editing these videos and sharing some strategies with me that helped me out. and many people that would take me about an hour to name from the Discord that also helped me realize a bunch of strategies and things that I can use to better my game in regionals. Overall, regionals was very close. There were so many skilled opponents here, and all the matches were very close. I want to thank everyone for showing up, and again, thank you guys for watching.